Welcome to Parshas Bereishis Tafshin Pei Gimel. Bereishis is always the start of a new cycle, and one of the goals of the Mefarshei Torah is to be Noyetz Sofer B'Tchilasai, right? To make a connection between the last words of V'zayis HaBracha, Asher Asa Moshe Le'enei Kol Yisrael, L'chol Hayad HaChazaka, L'chol HaMoireg HaGadol, Asher Asa Moshe Le'enei Kol Yisrael, and to be Noyetz Sofer B'Tchilasai. B'Tchilasai, Le'enei Kol Yisrael goes directly into Bereishis Bara. And the many Pshatim said to tie in the end of the Torah with the beginning of the Torah. The idea is, ultimately, is that to understand that Torah is continuity. There's a cycle. You never finish Torah. Right? You finish Torah, it goes right back to the beginning. And Be'emes is that there is every year of our life is also like that, right? We don't go through separate years. Every year is like a repeat of the same zmanim, and sort of but it's a repeat in its own unique madrega. Like the way I picture it is, we know as you read the Sadairis, right? And every dar has a totally new Bria Ha'olam sort of, but the Olam just continues spiraling down, so it's not like sort of separate rings. It's like spiraling down. So Sefer B'Tchilasai just continues spiraling down, and every dar has its unique challenges because it's a unique bria. But it's like a new Bria Ha'olam. Bria Ha'olam starts with a very specific start of challenges, and the challenges they mimic previous dar's challenges, but they're actually very unique, and a person has to recognize every year is unique, every day is unique, and yesterday's Nisayon is not today's Nisayon. And don't get thrown off that today's Nisayon is something that you've never encountered before, because that's what life's about. Life is about literally living in a new world, every day. But
every day the world is created.
Every day the world's created a new world.
How is that?
We're going to talk about it from Levi Yitzchok a little bit. It's hard to describe how Hashem creates the world b'chlal, let alone describe how He has recreated every second from new. But maybe we'll talk about that a little bit. We have a Devar Torah, hopefully from Levi Yitzchok, who is a Baal Hilula today, and we'll maybe get into that. But one of the pshatim that I might have said in previous years is that every bria always has a chorban before it, right? In order to build, this is just the way the cycles of the world work. Right? You look at seasons, right? Every fall, right? The wind comes, prunes all the trees, knocks off all the leaves, and you start, right? It's like a chorban, right? Winter's a chorban, everything nice, and that is actually a setup for the next binyan. And that's what would be described in Kabbalah as that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is Baina Ilamis Umachrivan, right? He creates worlds, He destroys them, and then from the destruction, which appears to be destruction of the previous world, that's really a setup for the next binyan. And one of the ways that I sort of was Noyet Sofer B'Tchilasai, I probably said in previous years, is as follows. Right, whenever you see chorban, right, you're just like appalled by it. Like, how could this be, right? It goes against everything we know, until you see how on the chorban there's a new binyan that has its own unique tachlis, own unique growth that comes from it. And like we described, like it just pushed it in the trees growing all over the place, in the grass, and everything just comes back, and it comes back with new seeds in it, new life in it. When you talk about Chorban, let's say, of World War II, that's a Chorban of Klal Yisrael. At the time, it's impossible to fathom, right? Looking back 70 years and seeing that the tzaddikim that had emunah and held on tight, they rebuilt Klal Yisrael. I'm not maching effect, all the tzaras and all the tzara and all the loss and the tremendous agony of it, but in a very broad way, you look at it and you say the tzaddikim that held on built themselves up. Even look at Babab, look at Belz, look at Satmar, right? They're outshining. Look at Ger, they're outshining what they ever had before the war, right? And it's not just something that happened. Oh, look, they happened to come back. This is literally the cycles of the world. And that would be really the Noyet Sofer B'Tchilasai, right? The Sofer is where you have things seem to come to an end, but there's always that rejuvenation. And a person has to recognize in their own individual life, every time a person faces something that seems like the end of something and some sort of chorban in their life, to recognize this is HaKadosh Baruch Hu's way of setting up for the next leg, the next journey of life, in which you could take everything you learned from the past and all the emunah that you're developing from the chorban and build yourself a life that is going to, Be'ez Hashem, bring nachas ruach to yourself and to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. In the Yartzeit Mitchilasei, Rashi at the end of Bereishis, he says at the end of Zayis he just says a very interesting thing, right? All the tremendous nisim Hashem made, Asher Asa Moshe, that Moshe made le'einei Kol Yisrael, in front of the eyes of Klal Yisrael, and Rashi brings down what was le'einei Kol Yisrael. That Moshe Rabbeinu shenasa libar lishbar haluchais le'eineihem. That Moshe Rabbeinu, he broke the luchais in front of Klal Yisrael. Moshe Rabbeinu breaking the luchas in front of Klal Yisrael. That is the ultimate chorban, right? The idea of Elakim Atem Elyon Kulchem Chen Kadum Temusin, right? And boom, right? The crashing of the luchas describes Klal Yisrael's nefila from being mamish in Olam Hatikun back to square one, right? Back to Adam Rishon, Chet Adam Rishon, which is nice, right back to the beginning of Bereishis Bar Lakim to Adam Rishon. Right, that Shrius Haluchos really literally describes that the Torah is closing up with this topic of Moshe Rabbeinu doing a tremendous act of which seems to be Chorban, but ultimately Klal Yisrael is after that Chorban, they regathered themselves, had a Luchas Shnius, and they're here now at the gateway to Eretz Yisrael, ready to enter an unbelievable period of Klal Yisrael's history, and that really connects us to Bereishis Bar Elikim. That Bereishis Bar Elikim HaKadosh Baruch Hu was Bainei Lavis Machrivan, but more specifically, right? What is I mean, just not more specifically, but Chazal tells us before Bereishis Bar Elikim HaKadosh Baruch Hu was Bainei Lavis Machrivan, and Bereishis Bar Elikim was a extension of that original Chorban, but doesn't mention the Chorban in Bereishis, right? Chazal tells us Bereishis Bar Elikim was before this preceding Bereishis Bar Elikim was Chorban. HaKadosh Baruch Hu made other worlds and he destroyed them, and on top of that Chorban he made Bereishis. But it's merumas in the Le'einei Kol Yisrael that Rashi tells us refers to Shrius Haluchos, which is obviously very symbol of Bainei Lamas Umachrivan. So when you know Sofer Mitchilasei, the Sofer is actually giving you, right, the hakdama to Bereishis, that every binyan of an olam, every binyan of a person is always going to be preceded by some sort of chorban. That would be just a little hakdama to Bereishis. Yesterday, or I should say, Isuchag was the Yartzeit of the Ribnitzer, and Baruch Hashem, I went to Muncie and spent some time over there. And every year the crowd gets bigger and bigger, and it became, in a way it's a Kiddush Hashem, and in a way it shows that a tzaddik who's Ma'aser Nefesh, for Klal Yisrael and has the ability to be tzaddik geyser, HaKadosh Baruch Hu Mekayim, right? That actually extends lachar misasai, right? And people, the Gemara tells Gedolim tzaddikim b'misasai yesim b'chayim, tzaddikim on some level are greater. The koach is greater after they're not in this world. But in a way, it's like you could have 50,000 people go, and every person feels to have some sort of yeshua, and it just seems mind-boggling, right? One person can have such a koyach, right? Can have such schusim, right? And the answer is every yid can have amazing schusim beyond what you can imagine, right? People sell their lives short and say, okay, I'm gonna daven half-baked Shemini Esrei my whole life. I'm gonna be half-baked my avodas Hashem. And because they don't recognize the billions and billions that a person can make, whatever, lemashal, right? The sky's the limit. And when you see the way a tzaddik is taka has such a tremendous koyach, it should inspire us, right? That we could also be much greater than we can imagine. The Ribnitzer, he encouraged people to come, and be mispalled by I believe, after his nifta, he says, come. He says, the more people come, the more you recognize the koyach of a tzaddik, right? The more koyach he has, right? Because ultimately, a tzaddik is what is a tzaddik? A tzaddik is someone that is an example to us of what it means to be an Oved Hashem. And when you connect to tzaddik, that means you're actually taking an example how a person can serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu in a truer way. If you didn't have tzaddikim as examples, right? What would our examples be of Avodas Hashem, right? It would be I don't know. It would just be like nothing. It would be the coolest guy in shul would be our example. It would be a disaster. You'd have nothing to strive for, nothing to no example of someone totally being mevatel themselves for HaKadosh Baruch Hu's ratzon. And in tzaddikim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu plants tzaddikim in every dar. Shaslam b'chal dar v'dar. Gemara tells us, right? And it's a matana from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And when we connect to that matana, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, when we connect to the matana of HaKadosh Baruch Hu is mizakas with tremendous amount of chasam. Just one of my favorite stories of the Ribnitzer. I don't know if we recorded this recently. It's like the Ribnitzer did a lot of mifsim. He was very well known for his mifsim. Miracles, miraculous helping people. He would have wondrous chusim. They brought a child to him that had tremendous rash on the child's face, and he had a cup of milk in front of him. He said, "What rash?" They brought the child really close to him to show him the rash. He had a cup of milk. He gave a little splash in the milk. He said, "I don't see any rash," and they wiped off the milk, and the rash was gone. There's like stories like that, like miraculous type of story. What? Right. Right. His baby was blind, and they brought the baby to his Chanukah neiros. And he put the baby. No, he went in front of his Chanukah neiros. He looked. He stared at his Chanukah neiros. Then he stared at the baby's eyes. He stared at the Chanukah neiros. Stared at the baby's eyes, and the baby started seeing. So there were things that were wondrous types of things, and they're all very inspiring, right? But most inspiring from the ma'asim of tzaddik, from the life of a tzaddik, is when you see an example of how he connected to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Like how he made an ace, I have no idea, right? How did he do that? I have no idea. But when I see his connection, that is exposed through something, his deep connection to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that I can learn from, right? You get a glimpse of what makes him tick, right? So one of my favorite stories is he said over about himself that he was he lived in Russia. He had to go to mikveh every day, right? A tzaddik goes to mikveh every day no matter what. And he lived in frozen Russia. You have to go to mikveh in the river, and you have to break the ice to go to the river, into the water. So you get someone to crack a hole in the ice big enough to get in. You lower yourself in, and then you can imagine it's undressing in the freezing cold, standing on ice. They said also that his feet would stick to the ice, and he didn't care. He would leave blood stains on this from just his. When you walk on the ice with bare skin, right, it could get stuck. And machnish ice, the goyim they knew that him going to the mikveh was a big thing. They would put a straw around the ice that he wouldn't get stuck his feet wouldn't get stuck to the ice. Anyway, one day the goyim knew that he was a holy person.
Oh, in other words,
to put straw down that his feet shouldn't get stuck, and so one time he says he was in the mikveh underneath the ice, in the water, and all of a sudden he hears a rumble, which means the ice shifted above him, which means the hole where he went in is not above his head anymore. He looks up, he doesn't see the hole to get out. So here he is trapped underneath it, whatever it is, a foot of ice, right, in the river, right? So what's the reaction of a typical person? Total panic, right? And the next thing they know, they're being discovered 3 months later when the river thaws out, right? The Rebbe says he's in this situation, and he cries out to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, he says, Hashem, please, I want to live longer. Please allow me to live longer. I want to serve you more. I'm not done my avodas Hashem. Please give me the zchus of being oved you more. And after that tefillah, he looked up. The hole was right back above him, and he came out. But the part is that you get exposed to the instinct of a tzaddik, right? The instinct of a tzaddik is such that he's kaching one thing. He's kaching a hechetimsa opportunity. Another opportunity is of avodas Hashem. Another min of avodas Hashem. He's falling asleep over his Gemara. Another few words of Torah. Everything is just another moment, another opportunity of chapping nacha mitzvah, nacha a line of Torah. All what I could serve Hashem, connect to Hashem, and they know that the moment the person leaves this world, they may be in Gan Eden because they're big tzaddikim, right? But they're not going to have that deep connection to HaKadosh Baruch Hu anymore. They won't be able to make Hashem happy. They could receive, but they can't give at that point. And to tzaddik, that is the greatest nachas. I could do something for HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So that's a story of Chusiyog and later Rabbeinu Chaim Zalman by Rabbeinu Moshe. Today was the Yartzeit of Yitzchok and Berditchev. Opened up to the first shtickle in Kedushas Levi. And he says a Tifa shtickle, he says as follows. Bereishis bara l'kim es Hashem v'esa aretz. Hashem created the world, and he says creation didn't end 5,783 years ago. Creation is every day, like we were mentioning previously, right? HaKadosh Baruch Hu mechadish b'chol yom tam ma'aser bereishis, which means the way he describes it is that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is constantly being mashpia chiyas to the world. If HaKadosh Baruch Hu stopped sort of pouring kaviyachol chiyas life into the world would cease to exist, right? So it's not. So what he says, he's being buried. I mean, he is giving the fuel of life of chiyas to the world every second.
That's all it means. Well, it's not actually that the world is. That's what
the world
created anew every day.
Every second.
It's created anew every second, which means that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is constantly recreating. He's constantly, whatever Koyach Hashem put into the world. When he said Bereishis bara l'kim to make the world yesh me'ayin, he's continuously giving that hashpah, right? That pouring forth of life. Bereishis bara l'kim means Hashem says, "Let there be a world," and he's constantly giving Bereishis bara l'kim again and again, just constantly giving that shefa. That's how he describes it. And that's why we say Yartzeit ar HaKadosh Baruch Hu creates ar. Yartzeit ar is present. He's creating ar. Like we say, right? At the end of the Baruch of Yartzeit ar, HaKadosh Baruch Hu b'chadish b'chayim tam ma'aser bereishis ka'amor liYartzer la'isei arim gedolim ki'loim chasi. He's isei. Let's say asa arim, right? Arim gedolim. It says la'isei arim gedolim. Right? That's what we're saying. He's b'chadish b'chayim tam ma'aser bereishis ka'amor la'isei. Everything is present. Is present going on. He says, however, this is in the world. On one level, there is always a mechadish b'chayim tam ma'aser bereishis. However, we do say at times l'ashav yatzar, right? And he says from the Asher yatzar esa adam b'chachma, right? So he says is that there's two madregas to the world. There's a madrega of yesh, and
Yatzar is
created in the past, yeah. Right. And then instead of yaitzer, which is present. So he says there's two madregas that we live in this world. The world has a world of yesh, and the world has a part of ayin. Okay, meaning we connect HaKadosh Baruch Hu in a physical world, in something that we view as yesh, but at the same time we have to recognize, right, that Hashem is melech b'bchinas ayin, right, which means that there's nothing here, right, and it's constantly being remade alive, recreated. He says that the ayin is hanhaga v'kadosh baruch hu l'malim from teva, above nature, and which you would describe that we know it looks like there's a nature in the world, but really we know what's really leading everything is not nature, right? Everything is, we are where we are today, not because nature brought us here. We are where we are today because HaKadosh Baruch Hu is literally behind the scenes directing every person exactly where they need to be, right? And that is part of the ayin of the world. Right, the yesh would appear to be that this Corona bottle is here, right, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu is actually also being mechadish it, but it has some sort of yeshus in teva. So he says now that HaKadosh Baruch Hu made a teva, the teva was referred to as yesh, but there's still always the ayin going on, and the ayin is when you go to Olam Hasalim, you actually see the shefa coming down to the Corona bottle. That would be an ayin. Okay, he says. Our job is to make a hischabros between yesh and ayin. We have to take the world which appears to be yesh, which appears to be teva, and connect it to the ayin to recognize that it has nothing, no value, other than connecting it to HaKadosh Baruch Hu and HaKadosh Baruch Hu's ratzon. He says like this: mitzvah. He says, how do we connect? We connect with Torah mitzvahs, right? Mitzvahs connect us give us an ability to connect the yesh to the ayin. So he says as following. The word mitzvah, if you take Hashem's name, Yud-Kei Vav-Kei. Vav-Kei would describe Olam Hazeh. Yud-Kei are the higher letters, describe HaKadosh Baruch Hu where he is less perceived, because it's not Olam Hazeh. Vav K describes Olam Hazeh. Yud K describes HaKadosh Baruch Hu and the Olamis, right, the behind the scenes. So he says mitzvah. The Vav K is there Bizgaya, right? It's written out clearly that the Vav K is the Vav K of Yud K Vav K. The Mem Tzadi, he says, refers to the Yud K, but the Yud K is Behester. What does Mem Tzadi have to do with Yud K? The Yud K in Atbash is Mem Tzadi. Yud becomes a Mem, right? And a Hey becomes a Tzadi. So mitzvah is being miramis to Yud K, but showing you that it's Behester. How does Atbash show you that it's Behester? Like we described this in the past, Atbash means that the letters mirror each other. A Tuf mirrors an Aleph, right?
Reverse order.
In reverse at, when you say at, right, Aleph to Tuf, the Tuf is the mirror, right? It's sort of like you take the Aleph base and you fold them in half, right? You have Aleph base, Gimel Dal, you fold it all in half, right? And you have the at, bash, right? It mirrors each other. What does that mean? Olam Hazeh is just a mirror. So we put the...
If you rearrange the Tuf, it could look like an Aleph?
No. If you take Aleph base, write it out in two rows. Aleph base, Gimel Dal, Hey, Vav, Zayin, Ches, Tes,
Oh, from the top
Yud.
to the bottom. And
Yeah,
right.
It was, he sort of folded in half.
Like a
Take the
circle.
line, yeah.
Right.
So you're gonna have the Aleph at the top, and you know...
Right, you start from the beginning of
It would be
the
like Noyet Sofer B'Tchilasim,
tail
maybe.
of
Yeah.
Of the Tuf.
Yeah.
So
So the idea is that what Levi Yitzchok is saying is that mitzvah means that the ayin of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, which is Yud K, is only here in a mirror image in Olam Hazeh, because the Yud K remains in a matzav ayin. Mitzvah allows us to connect it, right? But the Mem Tzadi, we have the Yud K in Olam Hazeh lemaisa in its mirror form, because what is Olam Hazeh? Olam Hazeh is just is a reflection of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's bria, right? HaKadosh Baruch, right. But you have it here, right, in mirror image. Right, but you could perceive it. Yeah, but you could perceive it from the mirror. You could perceive the ayin, and your job with all mitzvahs is to connect the yesh to the ayin, and that's not only the mitzvah. And to recognize the mitzvah as being meramis, that you have the ability of connecting the yesh to the ayin. He says that. Okay, he says a little bit more about the Hester and Nigla mitzvahs, but we'll leave it at that. Schos Ben Levi Yitzchok Ben Sarah Sasa, what was his mother's name? Sasha Levi Yitzchok. What did I have his father?
He was Chassidish?
He was a Talmud of the Mezritcher Maggid, meaning he was second generation of the Talmidim of the Beshler. First Talmud, the Maggid was the first Talmud, and
Talmidim of what?
of the Baal Shem Tov.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Okay. Today was the Yartzeit of also the Chasam Sofer. I always find it interesting, the Chasam Sofer and the Levi. So we spoke about this in the past. It's like we're trying to understand what the Chasam Sofer's perspective. We spoke about it with Nosson Adler's Yartzeit. What was the Chasam Sofer's perspective of Hasidim? Because there were Hasidim that were and tzaddikim by the Hasidim that were out of this world, and the Chasam Sofer was out of this world. And I don't know much, and maybe there is some sort of things recorded about how they saw eye to eye and how their how their hanhag overlapped. There's no doubt that the Chasam Sofer appreciated the Hasidim were always at the forefront of any fight against Haskalah. It was understood that the Hasidim were at the forefront of that they were obviously very natural allies. But as far as his personal connection, I'd be curious if there is documented different interactions that he had. I'm sure there's a certain amount. He says like this. We talk about
during which era was he?
He was nifted in 1840, so he would have
pretty early on.
Pretty early, yeah. Yeah.
Pretty what? Early?
Pretty early on. Meaning he was a Rav in Pressburg for 40 years. I'm saying by 1800, he was. That was in the lifetime of the Rabbi Levi Yitzchok, and I had a story. I said it over for years that it was a ma'aseh between Rabbi Levi Yitzchok and the Chasam Sofer, but it wasn't. Levi Yitzchok, he went to Pressburg and the Rav before the Chasam Sofer in Pressburg. There is an interesting story of interaction between him And it said the Pressburger Rav, and then I realized that I once tried it. Seemed to be a little bit too early, and it wasn't the Chasam Sofer. It was a different. So if anyone listens to one years ago Arcos editions about that story, it was the Rav that it wasn't the Chasam Sofer. It was the Rav that preceded the Chasam Sofer, and his name is escaping me now. Talk about Yesh Me'ayin from Levi Yitzchok. The Chasam Sofer tells us something about Yesh Me'ayin. He says like this. In Gematria, right? So we know Tuf is typical of Gematria. Tuf is 400. You seem to be at the end of the line once you hit 400. But in truth, we have numbers, letters. We have letters that take us to 900, right? Well, take us to 900. Aleph becomes Aleph. Right, okay. But that's like Noit Sefer B'Tchilasei, right? Not Aleph, but Menatzbach, right? So Menatzbach, the end of the letters Mem, Nun, Sadi, Pei, and Chaf. Mem is 500, Nun is 6. Excuse me, it's backwards. Chaf is Chaf, and the Chaf. End of Chaf is 500. Mem is 600. Nun is 700. And the Fei is 800. And the Tzadi is 900. And then you go back to Aleph, which at this point becomes Aleph. Aleph becomes Aleph. Okay, so we have up to 900. Zak the Chasam Sofer is following.
So why is it Aleph if you said 900?
No. It's just as far as numbers go. In the Aleph base, you have representatives of all numbers up to 900, and once you get to 900, there is no number there's no letter that represents 1,000. However, when you go back to Aleph, which is 1, Aleph is also Aleph, which is 1,000.
It's spelled the same. So
okay.
Yeah, Aleph, right. Aleph.
Yeah, but you see, when you count, we don't use the end of the letters. We go with Tav Shin, Tav
Kol. You don't. The Chasam Sofer today Chasam Sofer today is going to go with end of letters, and he says as follows. He says Bereishis has in it a Shin and a Taf. Shin and Taf is 700. Right. He says that if you take the Shin and Taf and replace it with a Nun, with an end and Nun, so what do you have? He says you have in the Isius of Bereishis, Isius Bara Ayin Yesh. Okay, that's what he says. Bara Ayin Yesh, right? And that's how he's meramis it over here in Bereishis. He says also, interesting. He says Bereishis is Taryag, Shin. Okay. Taryag is spelled Tafresh Yud Aleph and a base instead of Taryag. He says why? Because that's the way Taryag mitzvahs were given, right? That the Taryag Tzival on Moshe, 611 of mitzvahs came from Moshe, and Shnai B'Piag Rushman we heard 2 from Hakadosh Baruch Hu direct. So when Bereishis is being meramis already to Taryag, it says Taryah, right? To 611 plus base, and then he says Taryag Shin. He says like this.
Taryag Shin.
Yeah, what's Shin? What is a Shin? He's saying
300.
Yeah. What's Taryag Shin? He says that every mitzvah is mechuna a Shin. Okay, Shin represents every mitzvah, and he says V'ro kol amir aretz ki Shem Hashem nikra alecha. He says Shem Hashem nikra alecha is Rashi Tevis of Shem Hashem nikra is Shin Yud and Nun, meaning Amir Aretz see that we reflect all the mitzvahs that we do. That Shem Hashem nikra alecha is a big ability to do all the mitzvahs, and he says that this is merumas in ice shin, right? And Chazal tells we actually put ice shin on our tefillin sharash, right? Because ice shin is miramis to all mitzvahs that Klal Yisrael has this connection to HaKadosh Baruch Hu through mitzvahs. So he says like this, that Asher Asa Moshe le'enei Kol Yisrael b'matan Torah Bereishis. Hashem, actually Moshe, he wants to be night Sofer B'Tchilasei. Moshe accomplished for Klal Yisrael by matan Torah Bereishis. Now Klal Yisrael has through Moshe Rabbeinu Taryag Shins, right? That we have these mitzvahs and this Shem Hashem Nikra Lecha, which is merumas by the ice shin of by ice shin.